Hello, this is wmpyr. I got an email from the Killa Method, and he basically said that he felt a little bit lost in his Filipino martial arts training, so I'm here to help out with that, okay? So first things first, the two main types of techniques that we have is the angles of attack and arm weaving. Okay, so the angles of attack, basically, this is what I call single stick techniques, or techniques that you do with one arm. Arm weaving, I call it double sticks, or techniques that you do with both of your hands. Okay, so that's really the only difference there. And there's a million types of different variations for each one. So angles of attack form, like I said, there's countless. There's honestly an infinite amount. And same with arm weaving. And don't let that overwhelm you, okay? Those are all good to practice, okay? And you don't need to know every single one. You don't need to experience all of them. Not at all right? And all that means is that there's enough material for you to practice for a lifetime. So you could do it endlessly. But that kind of training is what I call academia training. It's to expand your knowledge, okay? And of course, increase your experience with that kind of stuff. And you'll be able to get a lot of repetitions in, so your body mechanics will become a little bit more crisp. And if you know a lot of variations, you'll be able to teach that to your students, that kind of stuff, okay? What I call indirect application. So that stuff can help you for combat, but indirectly. So yeah, if you have better body mechanics, your balance is better, your wrist articulation is better, and all that kind of stuff, all of those things can indirectly help you in combat, okay? So compare that to direct application, okay? Because I've been saying to you guys, there's a difference between knowledge and applied knowledge, right? Application of knowledge. It's two separate things. So now what I'm saying to you is, if you have a guy who's been studying this stuff for, let's say, a decade, 10 years doing arm weaving and angles of attack, and he's looking through all the different variations, and he's exploring, and he's figured out a lot of stuff, okay, versus somebody who, instead of indirect application, is doing direct application, and he's only done 4 years, not 10. That's less than half, right? But if they were put in a self-defense situation, I would put my money on the guy who's only done 4 years. Why? Because he's specifically working towards a very specific goal, which is self-defense application. So he may not be able to break it down as well. He may not be able to teach it. He may not have the history and the philosophy and all the info behind all that. No, he may not have it as well, and definitely not know as much. But what little he knows, he can apply it. That's the difference right there. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. You need both, okay? You need both. Both is good, but when you are doing the indirect type stuff, you look on YouTube, probably most of the stuff that's being shown on YouTube by all these instructors is indirect application stuff. They're academia stuff, okay? It's nice to know this arm, this technique, this strike, and this combo, and whatever. Those are all academia stuff, okay? They can, like I said, indirectly help you, but at the end of the day, your bread and butter in a real life self-defense situation is going to come down to this, the blender. Can you do the blender or not? So all that other stuff may not even come into the picture. You're going to be using this guy, this bad boy right here, the blender. So what I recommend here, of course, is when you're doing academia stuff, maybe you cross-train or you see a video or something, just Tell yourself this is academia. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good for you to expand your knowledge, okay? Get some experience, move in a different way that you haven't before, practicing a new combo, all that stuff helps with the brain. It's all great, but it's academia. Don't think that this is for immediate self-defense application. So for immediate self-defense application, the blender, what is it? The blender, all it is the angles of attack and arm weaving done faster and done with more force than like doing it in the air or with a partner. It's like doing it for reals. Okay, that's what the blender is. So you're going to hit targets with it. You know, even if you do it in the air, you're going fast and with force. Therefore, you are going to need stamina to be able to do it. So you have to also do stamina training for blender, period. That's it. And before I divide it into the blenders for 2 arms, the flail is for 1 arm. Guys, don't worry about that. That was just for my own personal notes to keep it separate, to be more detailed. I don't want to confuse you guys. In the Philippines, I've never heard anyone say flail. So they only talk about the blender. So, you know, angles of attack, arm weaving, done for real life self-defense is the blender. You ask any Filipino martial artist that has been practicing a decent amount of time and ask them to show you, how would you use this in real life, in a real self-defense situation? And no explanation, don't show me, just do it. Let me see you do it. Don't stop and this is what this is. Don't explain. Just do it. I guarantee you it's going to be the blender, okay? It's going to be some type of blender that they're going to be doing. So, yeah, that's pretty much the idea there. So the blender is, like I said, either this, or you could even combine them, but that's all it is. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be applying it to the 4 ranges of combat, which is right here. Long range, medium range, close range, and ground range. Now, the 4 ranges of combat is something that I personally extracted out of Filipino martial arts. So it was there, but it was never taught to me like this, where someone said, you need to know this. This is the 4 ranges of combat. This is something I made up, okay? Now, some people may teach something similar or whatever, but anyway, I just want to make that clear. So long range, medium range, close range, and ground range are the 4 ranges, and we're going to put the blender in here. Now this can be used for any style, and the first thing you could do is you could use this as an organizer for your techniques. So, you know, you have a jumping side kick or something, you could put it right here, okay? And if you have a spinning back kick, maybe that goes right in here, okay, as a counter to one of their roundhouse kicks or something. And then, you know, you can have, for close range, you might like an uppercut or grab the head and, you know, dirty boxing style. And then for ground range, you might use a rear naked choke. So you organize your techniques into the different ranges, all right? So in our case right here, I'm really only concerned about the blender right now. We have more, but focus on the blender. The blender is one of those techniques that can be used in all 4 ranges. So that's pretty awesome. Like if you look at the rear naked choke, it's used primarily in ground range. Maybe you could use it in close range, but it's definitely, the close range is the clinch. But mainly, it is a ground range technique, okay? So compare that to the blender, where you could use it for all 4 of the ranges. So that's pretty awesome right there. Now, the thing about these 4 ranges is that, like I said, you could use it as an organizer. The problem with that is when you look back on the early Ultimate Fighting Championships, I guarantee you every stand-up striker that went in there had some kind of idea of range. So they probably thought, well, I'm going to kick this guy. I'm going to kick him really hard. If he gets closer, I'll punch him. And if he gets even closer, I'm going to use elbows and knees, and it'll be over. Well, it wasn't over. In fact, the grapplers dominated the early UFCs. Now, that doesn't mean that stand-up striking is useless. because if you look today, it's very useful, it's very effective. It just means that just organizing your techniques according to range is not enough. Each range is different from each other. It's not just in distance, they're actually different from each other, so they have their own unique characteristics. And if you want to fight in each range, you have to know what those characteristics are. And what I'm trying to say is then the blender that's used in all four ranges, the blender used in long range is going to be different than the blender used in medium range, which is also going to be different from the blender in close range and also the blender in ground range, because they're all different. So you have 4 different types of blenders, okay? That's what I'm trying to say right here. And yeah, so that's super important. But on top of that, now I got to put in a little bit of strategy for you guys following the Filipino martial arts creed, in my opinion. So according to the Filipino martial arts, I do not fight in medium range or ground range. I avoid those 2 ranges. Why? Because medium range, to put it simply, is boxing, and ground range is, to put it simply, wrestling. It's boxing and wrestling. And, you know, I don't want to fight there. I don't want to be there, because those are essentially, you're going head to head. And I don't want to test myself. In fact, I expect my opponent to be a better boxer and a better wrestler than I am. So if they're not, that's going to be a sad day for them. But I'm expecting they're better. Therefore, I don't want to be there, and I don't want to see who's the better boxer, who's the better wrestler. But just in case I end up in medium range or ground range, I do have some boxing and wrestling in my background to get me out of there as fast as possible, so I could be in long range or close range. Okay? So that's very important. I'm not ignorant of the 2 ranges. But like I said, I don't want to be there. So in the Filipino martial arts, if you look at the history, of course, they have the Filipino boxing and the Filipino wrestling, but that is separate from Kali, Escrima, and Arnis. And why I say that is because, you know, the angles of attack, arm waving, this is Kali, Escrima, Arnis. It's not Panantukan or Dumog. It's not the Filipino boxing and wrestling. Okay, so like I said, this is boxing, wrestling. That's not my game. In the Filipino martial arts, the history, it comes from the battlefield. And in there, the way that they fought wars is guerrilla warfare. Why? Because their opponents were superior opponents, either in technology, you know, or just outnumbered, or resources, or whatever. They faced superior opponents. And therefore, they had to do guerrilla warfare fighting. They could not go head to head. Boxing and wrestling is head to head. So it doesn't make sense for me to be using a style that comes from the Filipino warfare, Filipino military fighting style, Kali, Escrima, Arnis, to be going head to head with the opponent. I'm using guerrilla warfare tactics. Guerrilla warfare, in order to keep doing it, you have to survive. In self-defense, the most important thing is survival. So what I'm using here is combat self-defense, combat survival. Combat, because it comes, the roots, the history comes from war, comes from the battlefield, ancient and modern. And it's self-defense because it is survival. So I'm not, at any point here, I'm not concerned about knocking out the opponent or taking them out as fast as I can. If I wanted to take them out, all you have to do is research some Filipino warfare history and see how they did it. And it's not the way you're thinking at all. It's not fighting toe-to-toe. It's not like that. It's like 3-1. That's how they do it. So, you know, it just, in this situation here, where it's one-on-one, if not me versus multiple, okay, definitely doesn't make sense to be attacking. So it's about me surviving. And that's why this works very, very well with self-defense. And like I said, in order to do that, I stay away from medium range and ground range. So in long range, the idea is to defang the snake, is to hit them on the arm using the blender, or using the blender to make it difficult for them to come in so I could keep the distance. And it's all about keeping the distance in long range. That's how you fight in long range. So if you say you're a long range fighter and I see you moving towards the opponent, then that doesn't make sense, okay? And the reason why we're hitting the arm is because it allows us to keep that distance. If I try to hit them in the face or the body, I have to get a lot closer. So by hitting them on the arm, it allows me to keep that distance. And then from there, the footwork that I'll be employing in long range, once again, will allow me to keep the distance. It's all about staying away, okay? And it is the safest place to be. So between long range and close range, I prefer long range. Without a doubt, it's the safer place, okay? Because this is the place where they can't reach me yet, all right? In close range, this is the clinch, so this is where we can grab a hold of each other. So in this case, since they can grab a hold of me, my first concern is I don't want to be swung around to where they slam me against the wall, or they, pick me up and throw me onto the ground or something, and now I'm going to be in ground range, even harder to get away. So I definitely don't want that. So the first thing is I need to nullify all of that. And how do I do that? Once again, it's the blender. I'm using the blender as a grinder. Remember, using the blender in each range is going to be different. So I'm using the same motion for all of it. Heaven 6 or angles of attack, the 5 angles of attack, whatever it is, the same motion, but using it for a totally different purpose because each range is different. So in close range, I'm going to be grinding on their face. Now ask them to throw me or to pick me up or to slam me or to take me down to the ground or whatever while I'm grinding on their face and over their the bridge of the nose and the eyes and all that. It's going to make it very, very difficult for them to do that to me, So, that's the way I'm using the blender here in close range. I'm completely distracting them and causing some pain, undeniable pain, not knocking them out or anything like that, And you might go, well, why not? Well, remember, I'm expecting them to be a better fighter than I am. So if I start trying to land elbows on the guy, why won't they do the same to me? For sure they will. If I try to land knees on the guy, he's going to try to land knees on me too. And then who's going to land the knee? Who's going to land the elbow? The better fighter. And I don't want to play that game. Do I think that I get the worst UFC fighter ever, and if I'm in the clinch with the guy, and I'm trying to use elbows and knees against the guy, I guarantee you his elbows and knees are going to be way better than mine, and I don't think I'll be able to land anything on him significant, and he's going to destroy me. And I'm talking about the weakest, the worst UFC fighter ever, and he's probably has a huge advantage over me. Now, can I use the blender on him? Can I grind on his face? That I feel like I can do. And I feel like I can do better than him because I've been practicing the blender. He hasn't. He's not familiar with it. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what the purpose is. It's not in his arsenal. So there's a lot of reasons why I feel comfortable with it. And I will have a much higher success rate. The drawback is it's not going to knock him out for sure. And I understand that. But to expect to knock out someone who's a superior fighter than me, that doesn't make sense. My goal is to survive and live another day. And if I really want to take him out, it's when he's sleeping. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.